wake up! If you die out here, my walk home is gonna haunt me for the rest of my life!
You want me alive? Then get me out of this rain!
Hey, wake up. If you die out here, my walk home is going to haunt me for the rest of my life. Past midnight in New York City, lightning split the sky and bleached the walls of a worn-down emergency room stark white. Maya had just pushed through the front doors 36 hours straight, and her body had the receipt. That's when a shadow came staggering out of the dark and fell right into her. Rain had soaked everything through, but she caught him on instinct. This wasn't just some stranger who'd tripped. What had just collapsed into her arms smelled like blood and felt like trouble, the kind that doesn't let go.
You want me alive? Then get me out of this rain.
Hey, stay with me. He didn't answer. His blood-soaked hand grabbed the front of her scrubs and held on. The left side of his white shirt had gone deep red, and a convoy of black SUVs was screaming toward the hospital entrance with their tires shrieking against the wet asphalt. There was nowhere to run. His eyes, when they caught hers, were burning. Fierce, animal, alive.
My car. Right there. Get in.
He pointed to a black sedan sitting in the shadows, headlights off, engine already running like it had been waiting for exactly this moment. Maya didn't have options. To get away from the men closing in, she hauled him into the passenger seat and got behind the wheel herself. The engine roared. The rain-slicked road opened up in front of them. Are you kidding me right now? What am I actually doing? Her hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Then the sound hit her, his breathing, rough and ragged from the seat beside her, and something in her locked in. His name was Joon. He gripped his wound and stared at her like he was trying to figure out what she was.
Drive. Don't look back.
You need to stop talking. You are 30 seconds from going into hemorrhagic shock. One hand on the wheel, the other unwrapping her scarf to press hard into his shoulder. Her wet hair kept falling in her face. She let it. Right now, the only thing standing between this man and a bad ending was her, and some part of her had already decided that was enough reason to stay. Once she'd lost the tail and turned onto a dark stretch of road on the edge of the city, Joon reached out and grabbed her arm.
Joon. Kwon Joon. Hold on to that name. You bought my life tonight.
Rain drummed hard against the roof. Inside the car, the two of them held on, hearts pounding in uneven, overlapping rhythms, chasing the same desperate beat. This wasn't some random accident. This was the kind of collision you don't walk back from. Brutal and beautiful, all at once. Stay still. I'm driving, which means you're my patient, which means you listen to me. Even with the car sliding through the rain, Maya's hands stayed steady. Joon didn't fight her. He turned toward the window, nothing out there but dark trees blurring past. The pain was real, but it was the hollow feeling underneath it that showed on his face. The person who'd put a blade in him was someone he'd trusted with everything. And somewhere in the middle of running for his life, he'd stumbled into this sharp-tongued, impossible nurse who refused to leave him behind. The sedan finally stopped in front of an abandoned warehouse at the edge of a quiet harbor, a place Joon had scoped out weeks ago. Maya barely had the car in park before she was out the door, dragging her bag from the back seat. The rain came right back down on her hair. She looked at the scarf pressed against his shoulder, soaked dark, used up, and clicked her tongue. Get out, now. Inside, the warehouse smelled like old motor oil and years of dust. Joon dropped himself into a creaking metal chair like he was just glad to be done standing.
Why didn't you run? You could have taken the car. You still could.
Maya grabbed her bag off the floor and looked right at him. Because if I leave someone to die in front of me, I will have nightmares about it forever. And I don't walk away in the middle of treatment. That's not something I do. She dragged an old work lamp out from the corner and angled it straight at his shoulder. Joon watched her. The wet hair stuck to her face. The exhaustion carved into her features, and underneath all of it, something steady that didn't quit. He thought she reminded him of people he knew. The ones who'd learned to live like every single day was a fight they might not make it through. He reached into his jacket toward the thing he always kept there and stopped. Pulled his hand back. Something about this woman made him want to put it down. Just for a little while.
This isn't just a wound. Somebody meant to do this.
Her hands moved quickly, cutting away the shirt, getting to what was underneath. He should have been flinching. He wasn't. Jaw locked, eyes somewhere else, letting her work without a sound.
You've been through something like this before, haven't you? I can tell just by looking at you. You've got the eyes of someone who's seen too much of this and learned to go somewhere else when it happens.
Something shifted behind his eyes when she said it.
When staying alive depends on it, you get used to being close to death. You have to.
Maya paused. She looked at him.
I got used to it too. Except mine was to keep people alive. Different destination, same road, I guess.
She reached into her bag and pulled out a needle and thread.
No anesthetic. Just breathe through it.
He looked at her face, dead serious. No drama, and let out a short, quiet laugh. Nodded. The warehouse went quiet. Nothing but the sound of the needle working through skin. Maya pushed her hair back with one hand and focused. A bead of sweat dropped from her forehead and landed on his arm. He felt the warmth of it, small and human, landing on skin that had gone cold a long time ago.
Done. Get some rest.
Her hands settled against his skin, steady and sure, even at the end. Outside, the storm was still going. But inside the warehouse, the air had changed, slowly warmed by the heat of two people sharing the same small space. Joon looked down at the side of Maya's face while she finished her work. This woman from somewhere far away, from a world completely unlike his, she carried something he hadn't come across in a long time. Not cologne to cover anything up. Something rawer than that, the scent of someone who fought like hell every single day to keep things alive.
You wear expensive cologne to cover the smell of blood. I fake a smile to cover the fact that someone just died on me. Honestly, we're doing the exact same thing.
She said it while pressing a fresh piece of gauze over his wound, casual, like she was thinking out loud. Joon went still. He looked at her. Her fingertips trembled, just barely, but her eyes held steady. Clear and deep. In the dim glow of that single work lamp, her hair spread out around her like something from a painting. Slowly, Joon started talking. The kind of talking he hadn't done in years, if ever.
In my world, the moment you show weakness is the moment you're done. The cologne was never about covering anything up. It was the bare minimum proof that I was still here. Still breathing. Still a person.
Maya listened without interrupting, pressing down the last strip of tape over the bandage. The space between them had closed down to almost nothing. The quiet didn't hold. Seong-ho stepped through the warehouse entrance, the man who'd turned on Joon, with 5 or 6 others spreading out behind him, all of them aimed at Maya.
Boss, she must really be something. You're not usually the type to take this long.
His laugh bounced off the concrete walls and came back sounding wrong. Joon stepped in front of her without thinking twice. The shoulder lit up with pain. He smiled anyway, cold and slow.
Seong-ho, you can take everything I built, but what I choose to protect, that's not yours to touch.
Seong-ho made a move toward Maya. She pulled in a sharp breath. Joon reached back, found her shaking hand, and held it.
Close your eyes. This'll be over soon.
Stop. Just stop. What you need to protect isn't your organization, it's yourself.
Her voice hit the high ceiling and came right back down. At the end of it all, Joon had Seong-ho cornered, running on fumes. Seong-ho's eyes had gone small and scared. Joon's hands were shaking. That's when Maya stepped forward and wrapped her hands around his still red and held on. Whatever had been radiating off of him, that ice-cold edge, just dissolved the moment he looked up and found her eyes. Seong-ho and his people were gone. Pale early morning light had started seeping in through the gaps in the warehouse walls. Joon's legs finally gave and he sat down hard on the floor. Maya was right there beside him before he'd even landed, dropping to her knees.
It's over, Joon. You're safe.
He looked at her. For the first time, really the first time, he smiled. Small, quiet, completely real. A few days later, New York had gone back to looking like itself. The rain was long gone. Clean sunlight came down across the front of the hospital and made everything look almost ordinary. Maya came out through the main entrance at the end of her shift, back in order, and stopped. A familiar black sedan was parked at the curb. The door opened. Joon stepped out, clean suit, light bandage on the shoulder. None of that cold edge he used to carry around like a second skin. He walked over and stopped a few feet in front of her.
I heard you've been taking ride shares. Thought maybe this time you'd want to see who's driving before you get in.
Maya laughed, the real kind, the kind she couldn't hold back. She got in the car. Joon settled into the driver's seat and looked over at her.
Where to?
Somewhere that smells like really good coffee. Not blood, not cologne, just coffee.
The car pulled out slow and easy. Through the window, the two of them sat side by side, and something about the way they looked together felt solid. Settled, like it had always been heading here all along. A night that should have been nothing, a wrong turn in the rain, became the story that changed both of their lives. A man who'd lost himself somewhere inside the world he'd built, and a woman who'd spent so long keeping everyone else alive that she'd stopped taking care of herself. They found their way back through each other. Slowly, honestly, without trying to make it into something it wasn't. And somehow, that made it more real than anything. The people who end up mattering most are usually the ones you never saw coming, the ones you find when you stop looking at the surface and actually see what's underneath. Wanting to help someone, even when it costs you, has a way of becoming its own kind of armor. And the courage to walk away from a dark past doesn't come from some big dramatic moment. It comes from one person who looks at you and actually means what they say. These two met in the rain by accident and ended up being each other's way home. That's the thing about sincerity, it's the oldest light there is, and it still cuts through the dark. This story is a work of fiction.